It's Josh. I'm here with another review. I've seen a movie. I've done it again. And this time, the movie is Love Lies Bleeding, directed by English director Rose Glass. And this is a movie that is an art house indie movie, artisanal film, according to AMC. I don't know, maybe they don't do that anymore, but they were doing this ridiculous thing where movies with any kind of independent appeal, even not even funding or like status, just anything that had an edge of something. The Robert Pattinson Batman movie was an artisan film. I don't know how that works. Anyway, I saw Love Lies Bleeding, which had a fascinating looking trailer. It takes place in the 80s, and it looks from the trailer like some kind of a seedy, motel room romance between two women on tough times, and maybe there's some crime. And it's sort of like that. It is, but it's a little bit more. Then I found out that it was directed by Rose Glass, who made a movie a few years ago called Saint Maud. And then I became really intrigued because that movie was something very special. I highly recommend that one. I'm not going to get into that movie, although I might draw a quick, abstract parallel to it later in this review. So I went in, always excited to see something new and lurid and something other than a blockbuster. The first interesting thing about Love Lies Bleeding is that what we have here is it turns out, a sort of lesbian noir crime movie. I was going to say drama. It's a little more than that. But, this comes on the heels of Drive Away Dolls, which was a lesbian crime noir comedy of the most goofy sort, over-the-top comedy. And this one takes itself a little more seriously, though it still does have an edge of kind of magical realism, and there's other things going on. Very fascinated by this movie. It's one in a series of movies, it seems, of UK filmmakers deciding to shoot their movies in America and make them really, not to be too reductive, but essentially to do a Coen Brothers. The only other example on the top of my head is Three Billboards with Frances McDormand. Was his name is escaping me, but the director of In Bruges and The Banshees of Inisherin. He wanted to make a Coen Brothers movie essentially, so he made Three Billboards in America, and he cast Frances McDormand. That movie, I have a complicated relationship with that movie, as many do, but we're not talking about that movie. This is a movie that was meant to be shot in Scotland, apparently, but then the decision was made to transpose it to America, and it has two American leads. I think Katy O'Brien is American, I'm not sure. But Kristen Stewart is in the movie, and so is Katy O'Brien. Kristen Stewart, of course, and her career continues to be fascinating. She and Pattinson have both done a great job of kind of bucking the, they kind of followed the Daniel Radcliffe method of getting out of a giant family-friendly, well, I don't know, is Twilight friendly to any humans? But shaking that, blockbuster franchise kind of baggage, and then having a really interesting career doing good work, working with interesting filmmakers, and she's doing that again here. And Katy O'Brien, I was only familiar with from was it The Mandalorian or Andor or Obi-Wan, one of those Disney Plus Star Wars shows where she played a pretty interesting, as those shows go, character who ate a popsicle like this. Anyway, so I did not know that she had been an amateur bodybuilder, and that aspect of herself, it comes in handy in this movie. So what we have in this movie, it's the late 80s. I think it's the same basic time frame as Lisa Frankenstein was. And we have this kind of crappy little town that's run by a crime lord played by Ed Harris, who's really, really creepy in the movie, and his son-in-law, who is kind of his henchman and his enforcer, is Dave Franco in a really special performance as a kind of a salt of the earth fella. And essentially, Kristen Stewart we know she's estranged from her father and from his business. We don't know exactly the circumstances of that. Her mother is not in the picture, and she works at a gym with a bunch of big, beefy 80s dudes who are taking human growth hormones and acting poorly. And then Katy O'Brien's character shows up, and she is an amateur bodybuilder. She's left home We don't know what her circumstances are either, but she's kind of transient now. She's wandering around, and she is headed to Las Vegas to compete in a bodybuilding contest. But she stops in this small town. She gets a job working for Ed Harris, not knowing that he's a crime lord. And she also begins a relationship with Kristen Stewart's character, not knowing that she is the daughter of Ed Harris's character. And then things just kind of happen. It is a very Coen brothers kind of thing. And I hate using that. It's like with video games when everyone always says, oh, it has a Studio Ghibli art style. No, it doesn't. That almost never applies. There are a couple of games. There's one that literally has Studio Ghibli doing the artwork. That's Ni no Kuni, the first one. And then there's other ones that maybe try to approximate it, but you watch video game reviews and they say that about everything. And I don't want to overuse it's like Coen brothers, but I think that UK filmmakers in particular get really fascinated when they think of good American movies. They think of the Coen brothers. When they think of modern noir, they think of the Coen brothers, and I think they try to do it. So whereas Saint Maud was kind of a very small character piece that had kind of, I don't know if I call it magical realism or spiritualistic realism, very fascinating movie, highly recommended. This movie takes place in a kind of heightened version of reality. It's not a goofy comedy like Drive Away Dolls was, an actual Coen brother movie. This is a lot more dark and serious, and but it does have levity, and it does go to some unexpected places eventually in the plot and in the ending, which of course I will not spoil. The journey of watching this movie was a little up and down. I enjoyed it. The filmmaking is good. The cast is good. I already had some confidence in this filmmaker, but I couldn't tell what was going on. It might be my fault for bringing this Coen brothers comparison with me into the theater, but I feel like when I see people trying to construct a labyrinthine noir plot, I sometimes am like, all right, there's two traps here. You can either get too meticulous and make everything connect, but the story's boring, or you can do, you can make everything just random and who cares because it's only vibes, and then nobody can follow. The Coens have a really great track record of making movies that are in the middle, where the plot may not add up if you actually thought about it, but it's also not so random that you check out. I think that they find a really good, the combination of plot and vibes. It's a hard balance to strike, and I was unsure about this movie while I was watching it, but by the end, I was actually really caught up in it, and I really appreciated the end, where I feel like the director kind of brought her own sensibility and her own style. I was thinking how it couldn't be more unlike Saint Maud. If you go and watch a trailer for Saint Maud and a trailer for this movie, you'll see they're very, they're very different genres trying to do very different things, and it's a young filmmaker. I think this is only her second feature. I might be wrong about that. I think she's written some other things, but so I was just like, I would not have pegged this as being that same filmmaker. But then by the end, there again, I'm being very vague. Watch both of these movies. I'm recommending them. Maybe see Saint Maud first. But by the end, there are some things that happen in the final moments of Saint Maud that where perception and reality are kind of violently contrasted. And that kind of happens in this movie too, but in a very different way. That's all very vague. All I'm saying is there's interesting movies, and I'm very happy when I can see an interesting new movie and when there's a filmmaker to watch, and there certainly is one here. So that's my cryptic, weird review of a movie that I quite enjoyed, Love Lies Bleeding. There is some shocking violence in the movie, but there's also quite a bit of tenderness, and it's very interesting to me how filmmakers are evoking period lately. It's almost to the point where 80s or 90s or 2000s is just kind of like nobody wants to truly be trapped by them, and they shouldn't be. I was watching the making of Oppenheimer the other day, which gave me a real appreciation for that movie, which I already liked for the most part. But boy, the making of Oppenheimer is very compelling if you can see the Blu-ray, or maybe it's online somewhere. But Nolan's insistence on practical effects for all the kind of visual flourishes in that movie is remarkable. But also the way that they approached period was fascinating, because they're making something that's going to function almost as a document, right? It's got a precision of place and time and history, and they're getting things, they're referring to transcripts and photos. And yet, if Chris Nolan liked an exit sign or a push bar on a door that he felt right, even though it may or may not have been anachronistic, he would just go with it because he wanted it to feel right. And he also didn't want the period to distract from the story. And I think that in some of these smaller movies where period feels almost just like a fun little lark. Like, let's just make it in the 80s because why not? I think it really has to get out of the way of the story, or it has to be a really important part of the story. And I'm not criticizing this movie. It's fine. It worked for it. The 80s vibe of the people in the gym and the taking the hormones and all that stuff. I think it worked. It wasn't intrusive in this one. Sometimes though, I have felt recently that it was intrusive. That's probably all I have to say about Love Lies Bleeding. Recommended. Check it out. There's a train going by. I'm not going to edit it out. I'm not going to stop. Thank you so much for watching. I do have a Patreon at patreon.com/JoshWay, and you can support my riffs and my artwork and these movie reviews, which are low-key taking off. I'm seeing likes and comments from people who are not typically watching my riffing stuff, my comedy stuff. So I'm glad that it seems to be slowly maybe finding an audience and finding a path through the algorithm. And if I can make my own little corner here reviewing movies on YouTube, that seems like a really fun and appropriate thing. And I thank you for watching. I will talk to you again very soon. Josh out.